Industrial anarchy doesn't look like a riot in the streets. It looks like a line item on a balance sheet where worker safety is traded for a few extra cents of profit. Take the Deepwater Horizon disaster in 2010. 11 people died in that explosion in the Gulf of Mexico, a tragedy that BP eventually paid $65 billion to settle. But even that astronomical figure hasn't ended the era of high-risk shortcuts. In fact, if we look at the global map of production today, from the shipbreaking beaches of Bangladesh to the high-tech warehouses of the US, we're seeing a system where human life is frequently treated as a troublesome footnote in the pursuit of efficiency.
It's a persistent pattern where the distance from the consumer often dictates the level of danger. When we talk about shipbreaking, for instance, we're looking at what the International Labour Organization considers one of the most dangerous jobs on the planet. On the coast of Chittagong in Bangladesh, workers are essentially dismantling the ghosts of the global shipping industry with their bare hands. In 2023 alone, thousands of these men were climbing rusted skeletons of ships several stories high without safety ropes or helmets. They're using their own socks as gloves just to get a grip on glowing, blow-torched steel. The data from Human Rights Watch is sobering. The life expectancy for these workers is 20 years lower than the national average in Bangladesh.
20 years is a staggering deficit. It suggests that the environment isn't just risky, it's toxic. These ships aren't just empty steel hulls, they're packed with asbestos, heavy metals, and oil residues. If you recycle a ship properly, in a dry dock in Europe or the US, it costs a fortune because you have to manage those toxins. But if you just drive it onto a beach in South Asia, the cost of proper waste management disappears. Is that where the profit comes from? Simply externalizing the cost of poison onto the workers and the sand?
Exactly. NGO Shipbreaking Platform reports that since 2020, about 20,000 workers have dismantled over 520 ships on these beaches. Companies in the West choose these locations specifically because there's a lack of regulation that translates into millions in savings. When a massive explosion killed 6 workers at the SN Corporation yard in 2024, investigations revealed a total disregard for basic safety protocols. This isn't just an accident, it's a business model. They're avoiding the Basel Convention's rules on hazardous waste export by selling the ships to cash buyers, who then beach them where local laws are weak or simply ignored.
It's easy to look at Bangladesh and think, this is a problem of the developing world, but we're seeing a very similar logic of disposable bodies in the most advanced sectors of the Western economy. A U.S. Senate report released in late 2024 by Senator Bernie Sanders highlights a different kind of industrial anarchy inside Amazon's warehouses. The injury rates there are nearly double the industry average. We're not talking about explosions here, but about the slow destruction of the human frame through repetitive motion and impossible quotas.
The Senate investigation found that during peak periods like Prime Day, the recordable injury rate at Amazon was over 10 per 100 workers. To put that in perspective, that's more than double the average for the entire warehousing sector. Workers described a reality where surveillance is so constant and the productivity rate so high that there's no time for proper ergonomics. The most striking thing in that report was that Amazon's own internal studies, like Project Elderwand in 2021, actually recommended slowing down the work to prevent musculoskeletal disorders. But the management reportedly shelved those recommendations because they might affect the customer experience or delivery speed.
So the god of speed demands a sacrifice. If the delivery needs to be there tomorrow, the worker's back or wrist is the fuel that gets it there. It feels like a high-tech version of the same anarchy we see on the beaches. But let's shift to the open ocean, because there, the anarchy's even more literal. In the Thai fishing industry, we're talking about a $6 billion sector that activists say is built on hidden subsidies, specifically slave labor.
The open sea provides a kind of geographic immunity. Because of overfishing, these vessels stay out for months at a time, far from any inspectors. Migrant workers, often trafficked from Cambodia or Myanmar, are forced to work 18 to 24 hours a day. Some accounts from the Environmental Justice Foundation describe men being chained by their necks to the boats. A UN report revealed a statistic that is almost impossible to process. 59% of human trafficking victims on these boats reported witnessing the murder of a colleague. When there's no land in sight, the law of the owner is the only law that exists.
It's horrifying because the low price of seafood in a Western supermarket is directly connected to that absolute lack of oversight. If you don't have to pay wages and you can kill your workforce with impunity, your margins are fantastic. But industrial anarchy isn't just about distance or speed. Sometimes it's about the literal falsification of safety itself. There's a case in New York City from 2024 involving a company called Valor Security and Investigations that really illustrates how the bureaucracy of safety can be hollowed out from the inside.
That case is chilling because it happened in a highly regulated environment. Valor was the third largest safety certifier in New York City, and they were indicted for selling thousands of fake safety certificates to workers who never received a single hour of training. In 2022, a worker named Ivan Frias fell to his death from the 15th floor of a construction site. On paper, he was fully trained in fall protection. In reality, he'd been given a card for a fee, and the training he needed to stay alive simply never happened. The Manhattan District Attorney called it a sham safety school that prioritized cash over lives.
It shows that even when you have strict laws on the books, like New York's Local Law 19.6, the pressure to cut costs creates a market for fraud. If training takes 40 hours and costs time and money, a fake card that takes 5 minutes becomes a competitive advantage for a contractor. It's a race to the bottom, where the price is a contract and the penalty is a fall from the 15th floor. We've seen this cycle before, haven't we? The Rana Plaza collapse in 2013 was supposed to be the Bhopal moment for the garment industry.
Rana Plaza was a catastrophe on an unprecedented scale. 1,134 people died when that 8-story factory building collapsed in Savar. Cracks had been found the day before, the shops on the ground floor closed, but the garment workers were ordered back in under threat of losing their pay. In the aftermath, the Accord on Fire and Building Safety in Bangladesh was created. It was a legally binding agreement between unions and brands, and it did lead to massive improvements in thousands of factories. But here's the nuance. While many European brands signed on, many major American retailers refused. They preferred their own alliance, which relied on voluntary audits rather than legally binding commitments.
Why the resistance to a binding agreement? If the goal is truly safety, wouldn't you want the strongest possible mechanism? It seems like there's a fear that if you sign a binding contract, you lose the ability to walk away or shift your supply chain quickly. It's that tension between flexibility for the brand and stability for the worker. Even 10 years after Rana Plaza, we still see many companies opting for social audits that activists describe as superficial and easily manipulated.
The common thread in all these examples, from BP's deepwater wells to Amazon's Isles, is that regulation is often framed as a bureaucratic obstacle rather than a vital safeguard. After Deepwater Horizon, the US implemented the well control rule to tighten safety standards, but within a few years there were successful efforts to roll back those rules, citing unnecessary burdens on the industry. When we remove a layer of bureaucracy, we are quite literally removing a layer of protection from someone's body. The burden is shifted from the company's accountants to the worker's physical safety.
And the cost of this anarchy is immense, but it's often hidden because it's dispersed. We see the $65 billion BP paid, but how do you measure the cost of an orphaned family in Chittagong, or the lifelong chronic pain of a warehouse worker who was pushed too hard? These aren't just technical failures, there's a moral dimension here. When we allow these supply chains to operate in the shadows, or when we accept market efficiency as a justification for extreme risk, we're essentially saying that some lives are worth less than the margin on a product.
It's also about the erosion of social trust. If a worker can't trust that their safety certificate is real, or that their factory won't collapse, or that they won't be killed on a fishing boat, then the entire concept of work becomes an act of desperation or self-sacrifice. The industry often argues that these risks are part of the inherent danger of the job, but the data consistently shows these accidents are preventable. They happen because of decisions made in boardrooms thousands of miles away, where risk management is about protecting the stock price, not the human being on the front line.
The irony is that we have the technology and the wealth to make these jobs safe. We have the capability to recycle ships in dry docks. We have the data to know exactly how fast a human can move without injury. We have the satellite tech to monitor fishing fleets. The anarchy isn't a result of a lack of tools, it's a result of a lack of will. We've built a global system that is incredibly efficient at moving goods, but dangerously negligent at protecting the people who move them.
True progress would mean moving beyond voluntary corporate social responsibility and toward mandatory, legally binding global standards. It means closing the loopholes that allow a European shipping company to wash its hands of a ship once it hits a beach in South Asia. It means holding tech giants accountable for the musculoskeletal health of their workforce with the same rigor we use for their financial audits. Without that accountability, industrial anarchy will continue to be the engine of the modern economy.
It requires us, as consumers, to look past the price tag and the delivery speed and ask what the true cost of that item was. Understanding these mechanisms, seeing the line from a sunken oil rig to a ship-breaking beach to a local warehouse, is the first step. If we demand transparency and accountability, we can start to reclaim a world where profit doesn't require a body count. If you found this analysis important, share it with someone you think should know the real price of the things we buy.